There's a particular kind of emptiness that settles in when you realize the person you built your life around never truly saw you. It's not the dramatic heartbreak you see in movies, but a slow, creeping chill that seeps into every corner of your existence. You look around, at the years you've invested, the sacrifices you've made, and you wonder, when did I become so invisible? When did my love become so worthless? It's a quiet devastation, a realization that the life you thought you had was nothing more than a carefully constructed illusion. And the saddest part? Knowing that the one person who should have cherished you, the one person you gave everything to, simply didn't. Jack and I were together for 7 years. He always claimed he didn't understand romance yet for another woman. He was willing to buy roses, pick out a ring, and travel through 2 cities overnight just to be with her. Turns out, Jack wasn't clueless about romance, he just didn't love me enough. People around him used to say that the one who isn't loved is the real outsider in a relationship. So, I chose to walk away and let that woman have him. But for some reason, Jack regretted it. The day I was promoted to partner at the law firm, my friends threw a celebration dinner. Jack didn't show up, yet another important moment in my life that he managed to miss. For the past few years, my birthdays, Valentine's Day, even our wedding anniversaries, Jack had never been there. He was always busy, always had something more important to do. Whenever those special occasions came around, he'd brush them off, saying he didn't understand romance and had no interest in pointless rituals. When my friends asked where he was, I just smiled awkwardly and said he was a very busy man. Then, I arranged the flowers my friends had given me into a bouquet, snapped a picture, and sent it to Jack. It took him half a day to reply with a single word, ugly. I pursed my lips and typed back, annoyed, when's the last time you even bought me roses? Half an hour later, his belated response arrived, we're not dating. Of course, we weren't dating. We were married. 7 years, that was all it took for us to go from passion to indifference, from something full of life to something utterly lifeless. After the celebration, I came home to an empty, soulless house. Naturally, Jack wasn't there. I flopped onto the couch and scrolled through my phone out of boredom. Buried among hundreds of unread messages in a muted group chat, something caught my eye, a photo of Jack and another woman. She was cradling a bouquet of pink roses, leaning into his chest with a shy smile. Jack had one arm around her shoulders, his other hand carrying her handbag. Someone in the chat had casually mentioned how Jack and Helen made such a stunning couple, and the comments below were filled with endless praise. Helen, you two are perfect together. Such a gorgeous couple, love it. Damn, Jack, how long were you planning to keep your beautiful girlfriend a secret? Most of the people in this group were Jack's friends. They had probably forgotten I was even there, not surprising, considering I never posted or chatted. I scrolled through the flood of messages in silence and saved the photo of Jack and Helen. A few moments later, a notification popped up. The group chat had been deleted. I smirked. How boring. I thought there'd be more drama to enjoy. Jack didn't come home until nearly dawn. The moment he stepped through the door, he went straight to the bathroom, probably trying to wash off the lingering scent of another woman's perfume. By the time he emerged, I was waiting in the living room. Why so late? I asked, my voice cold and abrupt. Jack clearly hadn't expected me to still be awake. He startled for a split second before masking his surprise with indifference. What's this? An interrogation? I let out a soft laugh, my tone laced with disdain. What, got something to hide? Maria, I'm exhausted. Can you not be so childish, he muttered, making his way to the fridge for a bottle of water. Normally, when we argued, Jack had to win. Had to have the last word. But this time, he didn't even bother. If he wasn't guilty of something, I'd bet my law degree he was. At some point, Jack finally returned to the bedroom and lay down beside me. But I was still awake, listening to the steady rhythm of his breathing. It grated on me like nails on a chalkboard, sharing a bed while living separate lives. If there was ever a cruel irony in marriage, this was it. I slipped out of bed, padding silently to the kitchen, and poured myself a glass of red wine. Standing before the towering floor-to-ceiling windows, I stared out at the night cityscape, trying to make sense of how we ended up like this. There was a time when Jack and I had been madly in love. When had it all unraveled? I didn't hear him wake up, but suddenly he was beside me, taking the glass from my hand. "Go back to bed, Maria." I turned to face him, searching his eyes. "Tell me the truth, Jack. Have you done something you regret?" He didn't deny it. Instead, he deflected. "Why do you always overthink things?" That was all the confirmation I needed. As a lawyer and a woman, I trusted my instincts, and every instinct in my body was telling me it was time to prepare for what came next. I thought that after my questions that night, Jack would be more cautious, making it difficult for me to find solid proof of his affair. Turns out, even the universe wanted me to be free from this mess. On an ordinary day, while sorting through Jack's suits for dry cleaning, I stumbled upon a few luxury brand receipts tucked inside a pocket. Expensive handbags, the kind I had never seen in our home. That was all the confirmation I needed to start digging deeper. I began keeping a close eye on his recent transactions. I also found a way to retrieve footage from the dash cams in both of his cars. And that was when I realized if I wanted to find proof of Jack's infidelity, I didn't have to look far. The man who once claimed he didn't understand romance had somehow mastered the art of it for someone else. He picked out flowers for her. Carefully planned gifts for every anniversary. Even crossed 2 cities overnight just to be with her. They kissed in his car. Checked into hotels. Every plane ticket, every receipt proof of their so-called love. Jack hadn't been incapable of romance. He had simply decided I wasn't worth the effort. Only, I wasn't even heartbroken. Just disgusted. From 25 to 32, I had spent years of my life, perhaps chasing success in every aspect except the one that mattered most. Instead, I had built and sustained an utterly failed marriage. People probably expected me to lash out. To lose my mind. To become the bitter, scorned wife cursing her cheating husband. But when the truth finally stared me in the face, I felt nothing but calm. Years as a lawyer had shown me more broken marriages than I could count. I'd seen couples who once swore eternal love end up despising each other. I used to believe Jack and I were different. We weren't. We had fallen into the same inevitable cycle of two people who had grown to loathe each other. And I had no intention of holding on to something so thoroughly rotten. Thankfully, we had a prenuptial agreement. Whatever we had before marriage remained our own. And as for the marital assets? He was the one at fault. I wouldn't leave a single dime on the table. All I wanted now was to end this ridiculous farce as quickly as possible and reclaim my life. Jack must have assumed that since I hadn't confronted him again, I had given up. So he got bolder. Brazen, even. Word got around that he had hired Helen as his secretary, and the two of them were practically glued together at work, playing out their perfect little love story in broad daylight. Through the security camera at our front door, I saw Helen personally escort Jack home after a late-night business dinner, his body swaying drunkenly. She didn't even bother hiding it, clinging to him, letting him hold her, putting on a show right at my doorstep, as if daring me to react. She wanted me to see. Too bad for her, she played right into my hands. That night, Jack never made it inside. Instead, he staggered back into her car, and the two of them disappeared from the camera's view. I didn't need to guess where they went. Once a challenge like this is issued, it never stops at just one round. First, it was Helen leaving her lipstick in Jack's car. Then, it was the faint, unmistakable scratches on his back. Subtle little hints, all designed to remind me that I was sharing my husband with another woman. The more I ignored them, the more impatient Helen became. And then, one day, she did something truly amusing. She reached out to me and invited me to meet her at a cafe. A mistake. Her taste in coffee shops, it turned out, was just as poor as her taste in men. I barely touched the coffee in front of me, pushing it aside as I studied the woman sitting across from me. Helen Garcia. The third person in my marriage. Expensive dress. Perfect curls. A fresh-faced glow that still carried traces of youth. I had to admit, she was a pretty girl. But I wasn't here to judge her looks. Because the truth was, no matter how much I disliked Helen, Jack was the one who had betrayed me. He bore the greater blame. She was just a byproduct of his choices. That was until she opened her mouth. Helen had the audacity to say that I lost Jack because I wasn't good enough to keep a man's heart. That, as a wife, I was the definition of failure. She even offered a half-hearted apology before dropping her real intention. "I'm sorry, but I really love Jack." I almost laughed. I didn't care if she loved Jack. I didn't even care if Jack loved her. The only thing I cared about was what I could take from this marriage when I walked away from it. My emotions were no longer in play. This was strictly business now. I stared at her for a long moment before asking, "How did you and Jack meet?" "At a university business forum," she said. "Jack came to give a talk. I was part of the student council team assigned to host him." I cut her off with my next question. "Did you know he was married?" Helen hesitated, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "I saw the ring on his hand," she admitted. "And, well, someone like Jack, his personal details are easy to find online." "But so what?" Sunlight poured through the cafe windows, illuminating her face. At that moment, I realized her youth was her greatest weapon, and it was at that same event, that same university forum, where she and Jack had exchanged numbers. From there, the script was painfully predictable: shared interests, long conversations, secret meetings, the inevitable transition from emotional connection to physical intimacy. Helen recounted their love story like it was something beautiful, and I thought I might actually vomit. "Mrs. Miller, you'll let us be together, won't you?" I tilted my head and corrected her. "Maria." I met her gaze evenly. "Call me Maria, or if you prefer, Miss Smith." Helen blinked, then smiled, amusement flickering in her eyes. You're not what I expected." I could guess what she had expected: maybe a drink thrown in her face, maybe a public meltdown. Instead, I sipped my terrible coffee, unbothered. Then I asked the only question that truly interested me. "How much does Jack pay you per month?" Helen, still too young to know better, answered without hesitation. The number was generous, at least by her standards. To me, it was nothing more than pocket change, a fraction of what I earned on my own in a month. I glanced at my phone and decided I had wasted enough time. "I have to go," I said. Helen frowned slightly. "Something urgent?" I didn't answer her directly. But as a successful law firm partner, I had no interest in prolonging a conversation that held no value to me. More importantly, I had already gotten everything I needed from her. Jack and I met for the first time because of work. Back then, his company was still in its early stages, nothing like the empire it is today. He had gotten into a contract dispute with a major corporation, and the case had escalated to court. I was the attorney representing him. To meet all of Jack's demands and conditions, I worked around the clock, pulling endless late nights to build the strongest case possible. Meanwhile, that bastard made a habit of dropping by every few days supposedly to check on my progress. I was under immense pressure, and when it became too much, I'd slip into the stairwell for a quick cigarette, a single thin lady cigarette, just to keep me going. One evening, I ran into Jack there. He borrowed my lighter, and somehow, we ended up talking. A few days later, he started inviting me out to dinner, and before I knew it, I was dating Jack. I never really understood what he saw in me, so I tried to become whatever it was he liked. After we got married, I learned to be the perfect wife. In public, I played the role of Mrs. Miller flawlessly. In private, I worked tirelessly to draft and negotiate contracts that protected both Jack and his company from risk. But maybe he never truly saw any of it. Or maybe, to him, my efforts were simply expected to be nothing more than my duty. A marriage built on illusion. A husband who didn't love me. 7 years of my life wasted on a joke. Maybe, once upon a time, Jack did love me. After all, if he hadn't, he wouldn't have married me. If he hadn't, he wouldn't have quit smoking for me after we wed. But love, for Jack, had an expiration date. Or maybe he just liked spreading it around too much. Jack came home unusually early tonight. For the first time in what felt like forever, we actually sat at the same table and had dinner together. A few years ago, this would have been just another ordinary evening. But now, it felt almost surreal, strange even. After all, Jack had long since made a habit of finding excuses to leave early and come home late, too busy out there chasing girls like Helen, doing things he didn't even bother hiding anymore. "I met Helen today," I said casually. I caught the brief flicker of surprise in his eyes before he masked it. "To be honest, I kind of like her," I continued, watching his reaction with mild amusement. "If I were a man, I think I'd also enjoy dating someone that young and beautiful." Maria. Jack tried to cut me off, but I didn't give him the chance. I stated it as plainly as I could, with no emotion, no hesitation. "Jack, let's get a divorce." His fork paused midair. "If you refuse," I added, "I'll file for a divorce lawsuit." Jack stared at me in disbelief. "If you don't like her, I can make her leave." He said it so easily, as if it were a simple fix, as if I was supposed to just nod and accept it. I had no idea how a person could be this morally bankrupt. "Maria, are we really going to throw everything away over some clueless college grad?" He exhaled, as if I were the difficult one here. "I only got involved with her because you were always too busy. She gave me what you couldn't." Unbelievable. Not only was Jack cheating, but he actually thought I was to blame for it. Blaming me for having my own successful career. Blaming me for not being a housewife who blindly obeyed his every word. Blaming me for not throwing a tantrum when he first showed signs of cheating, as if that would have somehow stopped him. He must have lost his damn mind. At this point, I only blamed myself for one thing: how blind I had been to ever think this man was worth my time. I wasn't going to argue with him. I wasn't going to entertain his nonsense. Instead, I laid down my final card. "Jack, I'm a lawyer, and the evidence of your infidelity is endless." I met his gaze with unwavering certainty. "If this gets ugly, it won't end well for either of us." I was certain Jack would agree to the divorce. Keeping a mistress in secret was one thing. Having his affair turned into a public scandal was another. And for someone like Jack, a businessman with a growing company, bad press was the last thing he needed. Sure enough, as soon as I drafted the divorce petition, Jack messaged me to say he agreed. After leaving the courthouse, he offered to drive me home. I turned him down without a second thought. The only thing I wanted from him now was his complete disappearance from my life. Unfortunately, Jack was a terrible ex-husband. Instead of fading into oblivion, Jack started showing up in my life more often than when we were married. I never expected him to come to my firm. His company had recently been hit with a copyright infringement lawsuit, and he wanted to hire me as his outside counsel. I won't lie, professionally, it was a tempting case. Jack's company was no small player, and winning this lawsuit would bring substantial commercial value and solid PR, both for me and for the firm. But I wasn't stupid. A wolf showing up at the henhouse with a gift? No, thanks. I had no interest in working with Jack again, so I declined the case outright, suggesting that he hire one of my colleagues instead. They were more than capable of handling it. Jack let out a low, amused chuckle. "Maria, are you afraid of working with me now?" I met his gaze, unimpressed. His skin was thicker than a city wall. "Not afraid," I said dryly. "Just disgusted." His smirk faltered for a second before he threw out something unexpected. "I sent Helen abroad. She won't be coming back." I snorted. And why was I supposed to care? Helen was gone, but give it a few weeks, and another Sierra or Leah or whatever would pop up in her place. If our divorce had taught me anything, it was that Helen was never the first, and she certainly wouldn't be the last. But none of that had anything to do with me anymore. "Maria, we were together for 7 years. Are you seriously telling me you never regretted the divorce? Not even once?" I rolled my eyes. now he wanted to play the emotional card? Where was this energy before he cheated? Jack, I said, we got divorced because you cheated. You were the one at fault. That shut him up for a moment. He just looked at me, as if searching for something. Then, after a beat, he muttered, "You're colder than I thought." I shrugged. Call it whatever you want. Just remember one thing, we're never getting back together. With that, I turned and walked away, leaving him behind. Jack might just be the most shameless man I've ever met. Even after I gave him a final warning, he still had the audacity to show up at my firm like nothing had happened. This time, he even got smarter about it, playing the nice guy, making it hard for me to outright throw him out. Every time he came, he brought something. Flowers. Little gifts. Putting in more effort now than he ever did when we were dating. As if he had suddenly decided he needed me back. But the moment he handed me the exact same roses and lipstick he once gave me, I barely made it to the restroom before dry heaving into the sink. Absolutely disgusting. I tossed every single thing he brought into the trash and told him to get the hell out. For someone who'd been running a business for years, Jack must have felt a rare sting of humiliation, because for a few blissful days, he finally stopped bothering me. I thought that would be the end of it. But then Helen showed up again. One storm barely settled, and another was already rolling in. Same cafe. Same setup. Only this time, Helen's expression was more complicated. Her fingers brushed over the slight curve of her belly, her posture carefully constructed to look fragile. Helpless. "Miss Smith, I'm pregnant." I looked up from my coffee, unbothered. Helen bit her lip, hesitation flickering in her eyes. "Jack loves me. He sent me away because he still felt guilty toward you. That's why he's been avoiding my calls. But if you truly let go, if you give us your blessing, I know he'll marry me." At that, I couldn't help it. I laughed. A quiet, amused, pitying laugh. "Your child and your marriage have nothing to do with me." My tone was calm but absolute. "If you want to marry Jack, take it up with him. Leave me out of it." Helen's face stiffened, clearly not expecting such indifference. And just then, the cafe door swung open. Jack strolled in, looking smug, carrying an extravagant bouquet of red roses. I could already tell what was going through his mind. He must have thought he'd finally won me over. That after a few days of silence, he could waltz in like some victorious hero and charm me back. But what he didn't expect was Helen. The second his gaze landed on her, his confident grin froze. "Helen?" Her eyes lit up, clearly thinking Jack had come for her. She quickly stood, her voice eager. "Jack. I've missed you so much." But Jack's expression darkened instantly. He strode past her without a glance, moving to stand between us like he needed to physically shield me from her presence. Then, his voice dropped to an icy tone. "Who told you to come back?" I sighed internally. Here we go again. Helen hesitated, her face falling. I just wanted to talk to Maria." "And what does she have to do with you?" Jack cut her off coldly, his eyes filled with pure irritation. "I already told you, Helen. There was never anything real between us. You were just a distraction." Helen paled. Her lips trembled. "But you said you'd marry me." Jack let out a sharp, humorless laugh. "Don't flatter yourself. The day I paid you to leave New York, I made it clear, don't come looking for me again." For a moment, Helen looked like she was struggling to process what she had just heard. Her shock twisted into fury, her hands clenched into fists. Finally, she spat out a venomous, "You'll regret this." Then she stormed out. I watched the entire scene unfold, utterly indifferent. Because at the end of the day, none of this had anything to do with me. Jack turned back to me, regaining his confident smirk, holding out the bouquet as if nothing had happened. I glanced at it but didn't take it. "Have you forgotten? We're not together anymore. I'm not accepting gifts from you, especially not useless flowers." His smile faltered. Maria, we were together for 7 years. You really don't miss any of it. You saw what just happened. Helen meant nothing to me. I made mistakes, but I can fix them. I didn't bother responding. I simply stood, gathering my things. As I walked past him, I left him with just one final thought: Jack, you had plenty of chances to buy me flowers back when we still loved each other. Not after we divorced because you cheated. Jack kept calling and texting, refusing to give up. I ignored every single one, blocking his number without hesitation. But soon enough, he no longer had the time to play the role of the regretful ex-husband. That copyright lawsuit, the one I refused to take, ended up going unclaimed by my firm. My colleagues later told me over drinks that no one in our office wanted to lift a finger for a man like Jack Miller. Jack came home unusually early tonight. For the first time in what felt like forever, we actually sat at the same table and had dinner together. A few years ago, this would have been just another ordinary evening, but now it felt almost surreal, strange even. After all, Jack had long since made a habit of finding excuses to leave early and come home late, too busy out there chasing girls like Helen, doing things he didn't even bother hiding anymore. I met Helen today, I said casually. I caught the brief flicker of surprise in his eyes before he masked it. To be honest, I kind of like her, I continued, watching his reaction with mild amusement. If I were a man, I think I'd also enjoy dating someone that young and beautiful. Maria. Jack tried to cut me off, but I didn't give him the chance. I stated it as plainly as I could, with no emotion, no hesitation. Jack, let's get a divorce. His fork paused midair. If you refuse, I added, I'll file for a divorce lawsuit. Jack stared at me in disbelief. If you don't like her, I can make her leave. He said it so easily, as if it were a simple fix, as if I was supposed to just nod and accept it. I had no idea how a person could be this morally bankrupt. Maria, are we really going to throw everything away over some clueless college grad? Besides, he exhaled, as if I were the difficult one here. I only got involved with her because you were always too busy. She gave me what you couldn't. Unbelievable. Not only was Jack cheating, but he actually thought I was to blame for it. Blaming me for having my own successful career. Blaming me for not being a housewife who blindly obeyed his every word. Blaming me for not throwing a tantrum when he first showed signs of cheating, as if that would have somehow stopped him. He must have lost his damn mind. At this point, I only blamed myself for one thing: how blind I had been to ever think this man was worth my time. But I wasn't going to argue with him. I wasn't going to entertain his nonsense. Instead, I laid down my final card. Jack, I'm a lawyer, and the evidence of your infidelity is endless. I met his gaze with unwavering certainty. If this gets ugly, it won't end well for either of us. I was certain Jack would agree to the divorce. Keeping a mistress in secret was one thing, having his affair turned into a public scandal was another. And for someone like Jack, a businessman with a growing company, bad press was the last thing he needed. Sure enough, as soon as I drafted the divorce petition, Jack messaged me to say he agreed. After leaving the courthouse, he offered to drive me home. I turned him down without a second thought. The only thing I wanted from him now was his complete disappearance from my life. Unfortunately, Jack was a terrible ex-husband. Instead of fading into oblivion, he started showing up in my life more often than when we were married. I never expected him to come to my firm. His company had recently been hit with a copyright infringement lawsuit, and he wanted to hire me as his outside counsel. I won't lie, professionally, it was a tempting case. Jack's company was no small player, and winning this lawsuit would bring substantial commercial value and solid PR both for me and for the firm. But I wasn't stupid. A wolf showing up at the henhouse with a gift? No thanks. I had no interest in working with Jack again, so I declined the case outright, suggesting that he hire one of my colleagues instead. They were more than capable of handling it. Jack let out a low, amused chuckle. Maria, are you afraid of working with me now? I met his gaze, unimpressed. His skin was thicker than a city wall. Not afraid, I said dryly. Just disgusted. His smirk faltered for a second before he threw out something unexpected. I sent Helen abroad. She won't be coming back. I snorted. And why was I supposed to care? Helen was gone, but give it a few weeks, and another Sarah or Leah or whatever would pop up in her place. If our divorce had taught me anything, it was that Helen was never the first, and she certainly wouldn't be the last. But none of that had anything to do with me anymore. Jack finally lost everything. The lawsuit, the media exposure, the financial ruin all caught up with him. His empire crumbled, his investors pulled out, and his once loyal partners withdrew. Helen, despite everything, had the baby, but Jack didn't marry her like she had expected. Soon after, she sued him for child support, adding yet another layer of chaos to his already shattered life. Then, one night, I got a call from an unknown number. It was Jack. Drunk. Rambling. His thoughts were scattered and nonsensical. Near the end of that call, he finally said it. "Maria, I regret it." He regretted getting involved with Helen. He regretted divorcing me. But I knew better. His regret wasn't real, it was just the inevitable consequence of losing everything he once took for granted. Had things gone differently, had he not lost his company, his reputation, his stability, he would have never realized what he had lost in me. And even if he had the chance to do it all over again, he would still make the same mistakes. But me? I had no regrets. Jack had been my worst investment, both as a partner and as a person. He once called me selfish, too focused on myself. Maybe he was right. But if there's one thing I've learned, it's that everyone, especially women, should love themselves first. Jack, you're drunk. He was drunk and desperate. He even showed up at my door, begging to see me. It was winter, there was no heating in the hallway, and he sat outside my apartment all night, waiting for me to soften. I never did. Days later, he fell seriously ill. Not long after, his company declared bankruptcy. Helen, in the end, got her child support. The next time I ran into her on the street, she was alone with her child, looking years older and all traces of her former glamour gone. Both she and Jack had made their choices, and in the end, they had to live with them. A year later, I never expected to run into Jack again. It was in a restaurant, and he was unrecognizable. His shirt was wrinkled, clinging to his frame like it hadn't been washed in days. His cheeks were hollow, his eyes sunken, dark circles etched beneath them. A scruffy layer of unshaven stubble covered his jaw, erasing all traces of the polished, self-assured man he used to be. "Maria." Jack looked at me. Then his gaze flicked to the man beside me. "You and him," a hollow laugh slipped from his lips, "so you and Adam," the man standing next to me. Adam was my former mentor, now my colleague and law firm partner. Our firm was expanding, opening a new branch in another state, and Adam had invited me to join him in overseeing its launch. Adam, ever the gentleman, subtly lowered his voice. "Do you need me to handle this?" He stood behind me, his presence steady, protective, not out of fear, but because anyone could see that Jack was in no state to be reasoned with. Jack parted his lips as if he wanted to say something more, but all that came out was my name. Then, after a moment, his face twisted into something bitter, something ugly. "Maria, you and I are the same." The words were laced with cold mockery. Do he have Helen? Do I have Adam? Did he want to twist my choices into some distorted reflection of his own failures, to pretend that if I had moved on, then somehow, we were even, as if that could absolve him of his past? Jack had always been trash, and this was just another desperate attempt to drag me down to his level. I didn't bother explaining anything to him. I simply exchanged a glance with Adam, nodded, and turned to leave. And that's when Jack snapped. Without warning, he lunged at Adam, fists swinging. Adam wasn't the type to start a fight, but he also wasn't the type to back down from one. The two men collided, but Jack had long since been hollowed out by alcohol and indulgence. He was no match for Adam. This was nothing more than self-inflicted humiliation. The restaurant staff called the police. When the officers arrived, Adam calmly explained the situation: self-defense, nothing more. Jack, on the other hand, kept ranting, hurling insults, spitting out every filthy word he could muster. That's when I'd had enough. I stepped forward and slapped him across the face, hard. The room fell silent. Jack stared at me, stunned. "Jack," I said, my voice steady. "I know you're miserable, but you need to understand your misery has nothing to do with me, Helen, or anyone else. Every choice you made, every mistake, every misstep, has been your own. You're a grown man, and it's about time you learn to take responsibility for yourself. I'm not going to be the one you drag down with you. And I sure as hell won't be the one to save you. I have my own life to live, and it doesn't include you." In the end, I accepted Adam's invitation and decided to help him run the new law office in another state together. Leaving behind the city where I had spent most of my life felt both surreal and liberating, but it's not like I was running away. I was moving forward. When I arrived at the office on the first day, stepping into a sleek, sunlit space buzzing with energy, my name was already on the door: Maria Smith, managing partner. I traced my fingers over the engraving, feeling a deep, unshakable sense of satisfaction that I had built this life for myself. Not as someone's wife, not as someone's mistake, but as Maria Smith. That night, as I sat on the balcony of my new apartment, looking out over a skyline I had yet to explore, I let myself really think about everything that had led me here. For 7 years, I had given my all to a marriage that had never truly been mine. I had tried to mold myself into the perfect wife, the perfect partner, convincing myself that love was something I had to earn. But love, real love, wasn't something that came with conditions. It wasn't something you had to prove your worth for. And Jack? He had never been worth it. He had taken and taken, mistaking my patience for permanence, mistaking my devotion for duty. But I wasn't his crutch. I wasn't his safety net. And I wasn't his anymore. Looking ahead, there was an entire future waiting for me, full of possibilities, free of deadweight. And no matter what came next, one thing was certain: nothing and no one would ever stop me from living exactly the life I wanted.
Maria and I had been together for 7 years. She was always a driven woman, always so focused on her career, and yet she always complained that I didn't understand romance. I never understood it, honestly. All those little gestures she craved felt like distractions to me. But then came Helen, and suddenly, I found myself doing all the things Maria had begged me to do. I didn't understand it then, but now, looking back, I see it more clearly. Helen was what I wanted. Maria wasn't. It wasn't that I didn't love Maria at one point. I did. But somewhere along the way, things just faded. We started as something passionate, filled with possibilities. I loved how she worked so hard, how she always seemed to have it together. But maybe I grew tired of the same routine. The constant reminders that I wasn't romantic enough, that I didn't care enough. I tried, but it was never enough. I would miss important moments for her, like her promotion to partner at the firm. She never stopped being successful, and I never seemed to keep up. Then, there was the night of her celebration. She was with her friends, celebrating this great milestone. And I wasn't there. Of course, she sent me a picture of the flowers they'd gotten her, a typical look what you missed moment. She was angry. She'd been angry a lot lately, but that picture was the last straw. "When's the last time you even bought me roses?" she had texted me, and when I replied, I wasn't thinking. I just said, "We're not dating." But I knew what that meant. We were married, but somehow, we weren't. That hit me in a way I wasn't ready for. That night, I came home to an empty house. She was there, sitting alone, scrolling through her phone. I knew the moment she saw the photo of me with Helen. She never said anything, but I knew. And I didn't care. I walked past her into the bathroom, hoping she wouldn't question me. But when I came back out, there she was, cold, distant, asking questions I didn't want to answer. "Why so late?" she asked, her tone sharp, like she already knew. It was ridiculous. I didn't need to explain myself. But I did anyway. I tried to make it sound like nothing was wrong. "Can you not be so childish?" I muttered, trying to brush her off. But even then, I knew. I knew this wasn't just about one night, one mistake. This was about everything I had ignored for years. I came back to bed, but the distance between us had already grown so wide that I couldn't bear it. She was awake, staring at me like she had already given up. It was her, or it was me. And I had already made my choice. Days went by, and she started digging. She started searching through everything, pulling up receipts, monitoring my moves, tracking everything I did. But I wasn't stupid. I knew what I was doing. I knew how much I was risking, but I had to keep it going. I couldn't let her get in the way of what made me happy. Helen was my escape. She was everything Maria wasn't anymore: young, exciting, fresh. Then came the day when I made a huge mistake. I thought I had everything under control. I thought I could keep things hidden, but Maria was too smart for that. She knew what was going on. The receipts, the flowers, the trips, she had it all. I thought I could get away with it, but I was wrong. I knew the moment she found the evidence, I was done. But I couldn't stop. I had already crossed the line. And then came the confrontation with Helen. She was so sure of herself. She thought everything would work out, that I would just leave Maria behind. But Maria was stronger than I gave her credit for. When Helen and I came face to face with her, I wasn't ready. I thought Maria would cave. I thought she'd beg me to stay. But instead, she turned cold. She didn't even care. She was done. It hit me then. I had no power anymore. Not over Maria, not over myself. After that, things spiraled. Helen wanted me, but even she couldn't change the fact that I had destroyed everything. Maria was gone, and I was left with nothing but the consequences of my own actions. I had underestimated her. I thought I could always come back. I thought she would forgive me. But when the divorce papers came, I saw the truth. She wasn't going to save me. She wasn't coming back. She was ready to let go. Even after the divorce, I kept trying. I called, I texted, I showed up at her office, hoping she'd reconsider. I thought if I could just prove that I had learned, that I regretted it all, maybe she would take me back. But she was done. She was done with me, done with everything I had put her through. She had moved on. And I was left in the wreckage of my own making. I saw her again, once, at a restaurant. She looked different, happier, stronger. And she wasn't alone. There was another man with her. Adam. I had known him before, when Maria and I were still married, but I hadn't thought about him much. Now, seeing them together, I realized how much had changed. She had moved on, and I was stuck in the past. Maria, I said, hoping for something, anything. She turned to me, her expression unreadable. Jack. I wanted to ask if she had ever regretted it. If she ever thought about us, about what we had before everything fell apart. But I knew the answer. And I knew she wasn't going to give me the reassurance I was looking for. She had made peace with her choices. And I was still living with mine. In the end, I had lost everything. The marriage, the love, the stability I once took for granted. And the worst part? It was all my fault.
10 years. It's hard to believe how much can change in a decade. The skyline outside my window is different now, a testament to the growth of this city, much like my own. I look back, sometimes, and it feels like a lifetime ago that I was trapped in a cycle of disappointment and misplaced loyalty. But then I remember the woman I am now, the life I've built, and I smile. The firm I run with Adam has flourished beyond my wildest dreams. We've expanded, taken on groundbreaking cases, and built a reputation for integrity and excellence. And Adam, he's more than just a partner. He's my rock, my confidant, the man who showed me what true partnership really means. We built this together, and our lives have intertwined in a way that feels both natural and profoundly fulfilling. I've traveled, I've laughed, I've learned to truly enjoy the simple things: a quiet morning with a good book, a spontaneous dinner with friends, the feeling of the sun on my face during a rare moment of downtime. I've learned that happiness isn't something you earn or negotiate, it's something you choose. And I choose it every single day. There are moments, of course, when I think of Jack. Not with anger or regret, but with a kind of detached curiosity. He's a ghost in my past, a reminder of who I used to be, and how far I've come. I've heard whispers of his life, a series of failed ventures and fleeting relationships. And though I don't wish him ill, I can't help but feel a sense of quiet satisfaction. He made his choices, and I made mine. My name is Maria Smith, and this is my life. It's a life filled with purpose, with joy, with the kind of love that lifts you up instead of holding you down. And I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world.